I'm here with my incredible friend, Dr. Everton Blair. He's got a runoff election that's coming up August 25th for District 13, and getting Georgians to vote is so important to me. And I want to dive into what's going on with Dr. Blair's policies so that way, when you guys head back out to the polls, you know exactly who you're voting for and what you're getting. Dr. Everton, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Alyssa. Thank you for bearing with me. It's such a busy day.
You know what? You're in crunch time. This is quite literally right now your Super Bowl, and you've got a lot going on. So I get it, and I just want to dive into some of your policies because prior to you stepping into running for Congress, you've done so much incredible work with Gwinnett County Schools. That's where I live. So, I want to dive into, your passion for people, and let's dive into your policies after that. So can you talk about some of your background?
Yeah, it's definitely been ingrained in me since birth. My mom is a pediatrician and has been taking care of kids ever since I was born. My grandfather is a Pentecostal pastor and does a lot of service work through our church, our home church. And my dad also gives a ton of his time and efforts to community members all throughout the community and has, developed a career in IT and just helping people and thinking innovatively. I think I got a blend of all of that, right? Like the solutions orientation engineer from my dad, the very sort of people focused, people power focused from my grandfather and mom. And I just grew up here in Gwinnett and was a kid who kind of played by the rules for the most part, and did really well and wanted to continue to see the community thrive. And then, as you probably also witnessed, like Gwinnett exploded over our childhood and adolescence. And I just felt like those voices should be reflected in our leadership. And we've been kind of stagnant in a lot of our positions, and this congressional seat is no different. I see opportunity to lead forward. I see opportunity to bring a next generation to think about the challenges. Things are way too hard right now for us to be sending the exact same leader over and over again who's not doing anything different. And so that's the kind of status quo that I want to challenge, not just with this election, but in general, because we should all be more participatory and all be more a part of every single one of these races, whether it's U.S. Congress or your local school board.
Absolutely. And you know what? You may be getting into good trouble, so that's totally fine with me. We all know what they say about good trouble. And I certainly appreciate that. Now, this is kind of a special seat because it was held for many years by Congressman David Scott. May he rest. And what I appreciate, some of the policy points you stand on is what you were saying is we have to almost in essence cap this so we can continue to get innovation and continue to get new ideas, fresh policies, because that's what's going to serve especially Georgians in District 13. Could you talk a little bit about your stance on housing right now? Because like you said, Gwinnett County has blown up and it feels like it's impossible to find reasonable housing, whether that is actually buying a home or you're a renter trying to find something in a great school district or in a neighborhood that's near your job, but is also reasonable in rent.
Yeah, we need an economy and we need, honestly, a leadership that is keeping up with the times, right? Too much has changed. Even the 13th congressional district has boomed and shifted, right? As it's comprised right now, these counties were not this size and they did not look this way, 22 years ago when the district was created. And so because of that change, we need leadership that is advancing and innovating and keeping up with that change. That is the biggest gap right now, right? And when it comes to housing, I've been very critical and clear over the course of my campaign for the then primary and now special that we need a champion who's going to work on a people first agenda. You should be able to pay the bills and buy a single family home with one single family full-time job. And it is just too hard right now for so many families from across the spectrum, right? Our seniors who are on fixed income relying on one Social Security check a month, and their property taxes are going up, and if they're renting, their rent is going up, all the way down to our youngest generation, graduating, some of them from high school and or college and or the going right into the workforce, and just could never possibly save enough for the down payment for a home, while rent is more expensive than the mortgages are. And our wages are not keeping up with the rising costs every day. And so if you don't have a championed, disciplined leader who is going to task on those issues, our lives will not get better because we're going to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. One of the biggest practices that's happening in the suburbs of Metro Atlanta is the buying of single family homes and turning them into rental properties by out of state corporate landlords. I would crack down completely on that practice. Now, I commend the housing bill that the House and Senate passed in bipartisan fashion, but then it sat on Donald Trump's desk. But I honestly think the next Congress needs to go even further because it's still too many homes that a corporation can buy. And there's still not enough down payment assistance for our hardworking families in the middle class. And we know that owning a home is one of the biggest levers to accessing the American dream and building intergenerational wealth. But it's just too out of reach for way too many of us in an economy that's only working well for the rich people. And all the rest of us are struggling to make ends meet day to day. So that the one big thing that would be we need to expand and incentivize the supply of housing. We need to build smarter so that they're concentrated around nodes of opportunity where you can have a job that's close to where you live and where there's a booming economy, a small business and a local economy that allows for more support for you to get the things that you need and the services that you need. And we also just need assistance. I mean, people who are struggling and have done everything right in the richest country in the history of the world, we can help them out and make sure that they're not on the streets or at risk of being evicted or foreclosed because their wages just aren't keeping up with the costs.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think I can appreciate about your campaign and about you is you talk about, being the son of immigrants. And I've seen that with my own family story and just kind of watching that hard work and what that means and how you're saying somebody goes and they do everything right. Maybe they get to go to post high school education and they get to advance their education and get that degree. It's harder. It's now harder than ever to be able to purchase a home or even get a down payment for a car or anything like that. Can you talk about just not only the rising costs of living, but you also have a policy and plan for health and wellness with healthcare. Can you talk about how you want to incorporate that into what you would see as your ultimate vision for District 13?
Yeah, and all of these things are connected, and I'm so glad that you're weaving some of the interstitial threads together, because this is kind of what prompted me to get into broader public policy from being a classroom teacher. I began to see all my students facing all of these other challenges. It wasn't just reading; it was like, do I have a healthy child coming to school every day in front of me that's ready to learn? Right? Are they well fed? Right? So when food stamps are cut in our highest poverty schools, that impacts the quality of education, right? When there's not access to affordable health care and you have to take a day off in order to drive further to go to the clinic or to see the specialist because there's not a medical pipeline of trained professionals that are in the suburbs where you live, right? Like that means that you're waiting longer, you're paying more, and you're inconvenienced even further for basic needs. And we need someone who is going to champion Medicare for all. And in the interim, right now, there is no reason why Georgia should not have already expanded Medicaid and is leaving those dollars on the table. And there's no reason why the government shutdown that we went for the longest history in the last Congress did not achieve the ACA subsidies for which they underwent the shutdown in the first place. So it to me is not a laughing matter. And I think when it comes to healthcare, we see the challenges in our VA hospital in the district in Covington. We see how that connects to our veterans who have given their life to sacrifice for our freedoms and are not getting the support that they need or the coverage in their healthcare plans. I talk to veterans across this district every day who name that as a challenge, all the way down to our young people, where Trump has repealed all of the progressive Biden era benefits that were lifting families out of poverty. Right? We slashed child poverty by a third under Biden's plan. And then Trump reversed it in his second term. And so we need champions who are going to look at a map and look at a district and look at a budget and say, here are the things that will benefit people. And we need to hold the line on delivering that for us because things can get better if you just have somebody who's, kind of putting the parts together.
Absolutely. I think right now we live in such a time and space where people get lots of media thrown at them and lots of messaging from different places. What would you say is your clear, concise message to the people that they know this is what you stand for and what you're doing for the community?
I want to end this war in Iran. I am very clear-eyed that the way that I was campaigning for the full term in the full-time seat is a little bit different than the things that people can expect for me to get done in 5 months, but it's still important. And things will not get better until we see every possible scenario and seat and opportunity as a moment to pick the strongest fighter to advance the sharpest agenda the most. And that's what this race presents. It's really a referendum on change, right? Do we want a placeholder in the seat who's going to keep everything the same? Or do we want somebody who will use their intellect and capacity to figure out ways where even if it's a glimmer, a glimmer of a moment of hope, we can use that to push forward and to fight harder. I see this administration as having no checks and balances and a completely malfeasant legislature that has basically abdicated its duty of oversight. And, Democrats aren't in the majority right now, but we're only in like a 3 to 4 seat minority, depending on the day. So a lot of this stuff is just a matter of who shows up. And the fact that we don't have a member of Congress right now, is a disservice to the people of Georgia's 13th. And, I was running to bring that to fill that void in the first place. And so this just feels like the silver lining on a long campaign that has been focused on the issues and organized around what we deserve. And that is the hallmark of this campaign is we deserve more, things have changed, and we must change to keep up with those adaptations.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that message. Now, I think it's human nature to be apprehensive to change and be scared of change. What would you say to the person who's like scared right now of who's the right person to vote for? We've got a little bit of familiarity with Marcy Scott, it's her father's seat. So, what would you say to somebody who might be a little scared of something different?
My mom is a pediatrician, and you would not just throw me into a pediatric office exam room to take care of your child. This is a job, and it requires training and capacity and readiness that I have proven, as the only elected leader in this race, as the only person who lives in the district, and as the only person who has worked under President Obama's White House and has public policy experience on the ground in DC, education experience in our community, and leadership experience as an elected leader in the community. I think the contrast is very clear, but I do understand completely that, it's hard to communicate to a large swath of people who have been voting for a particular last name for over 50 years. And so I just need to know that and do the work to continue to earn support in the community. We've been doing a lot of work to introduce myself because, the more folks just are paying attention, the more that they're able to make the right choice. And we do believe that we're doing well in this campaign because I've been just humbly submitting myself to people like, I just want to do the work. And I'm, just like I did when I was first elected in Gwinnett, people were afraid and, oh, what's this young whippersnapper going to do when he gets in here? And I was 26 at that time. So just imagine, coming
Yeah.
fresh out of my master's program, and the things that I was able to do, I led. And that's why we have so much support in Gwinnett County, because, despite that fear, despite the doubts in my capacity and my ability, we were able to lead effectively. And I didn't do it by myself. And that's exactly what this moment requires, another opportunity to advance an agenda and also to build, right? We're going to have a new leader in this seat come January. So let's use this moment to be on ramping to do the best possible job. And then let's allow this to be an opportunity to have a new person with a new set of eyes, just look at the situation, right? That there's an opportunity to add some perspective here. And I see this as, just growth potential and a win for the district and a win for the community that I've always called home.
Absolutely. I have two more questions. One of them is very near and dear to my heart. My siblings are teacher. My mom works in education. And, can you talk a little bit about your stance? And you yourself come from an educational background. So I want to give you a chance to really talk about something that is equally as passionate about you and what you're doing for teachers in the classroom, for students in the classroom. Can you talk about your educational stance?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing we need to do right now is elect people who understand education budgets. Donald Trump has threatened to gut the Department of Education repeatedly, and we're barely hanging on to the federal funds that are coming to our district. And that needs to be a non-negotiable for this budget negotiation coming up this fall. The devastation, people trivialize the 5 months of this term, but I'm like, all Donald Trump needed was 3 days when he got rid of half of the CDC. So it doesn't take a lot of time to do bad, and we need strong champions who can prevent bad things from happening right now. And then we need to also be communicating our agenda to combat and reverse all of the damage that's been done and to deliver for the American people. It bothers me that we do not have members of Congress who are championing, the reverse of like a Project 2025. Like, we should have already put our plan out,
Yeah.
and we should be imbuing confidence in the voters and in our constituencies that we actually do have a plan. When it comes to public education, the one thing I'm really clear on is we need to safeguard the federal funds, especially the Title I funds that come down to our local schools. And when I led our $2.5 billion budget, about 700 million of that was a padding of ARP COVID dollars that have since somewhat gone away. And that we used those for academic intervention to give our teachers and hardworking clerical workers and staff workers a pay raise. And we were able to maintain that in Gwinnett even after I left the board, but that's not promised. And if this money goes away, that's 10 to 15% of our budgets. In Clayton County, is closer to 15%. And we just need to have somebody who is aware of all of what's at risk, where in an economy and in a political climate where you know, idiots are giving billionaires tax breaks and the rest of us continue to struggle. And I just don't believe that that's a country that we should live in.
And you know what? I completely understand and agree with what you're saying. I see it firsthand with my siblings, hearing, all the cuts that happen, how much, in some regards, there's a lot less that they're able to do in the classroom just because of the current status of everything right now. So I appreciate your stance on that. Dr. Blair, I don't want to hold you up too much longer. Could you let people know where they can get more information, read up on your policies? People need to head out to the polls on August 25th if they haven't already made it out. So can you let people know where they can read up on you a little bit longer?
Absolutely. We're active on all social platforms at Everton Blair. And my website is www.evertonblair.com. My email, if you have questions, is contact@evertonblair.com. I'm probably the most accessible and responsive member that you can attempt to reach out to at this moment. And as you mentioned, early voting is happening right now. So
Yes.
depending on your county, and we have the information on my website, but depending on your county, you have at least one early vote location Monday through Friday. The times vary, but they're open till 7 in most of the counties starting today. And then at your local normal precinct on Tuesday, August 25th. And this race is going to come down to a nail biter. So we're asking everybody to now it's not enough for you just to vote. You got to bring your whole household out.
Yes. Yeah.
It would also benefit us if you brought your neighbor out. Those are the type of multiplier effect margins that will signal to both our community and to the nation, like, we're at the precipice of change, and things will get better when more of us continue to participate. And that's what I'm really excited about in this election.
Absolutely. I love it so much. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Blair. And you know what? Best of luck in the polls. I know I got to get out there myself and put my vote in. I'm pretty excited to get my little I voted sticker. I have a collection of them. So,
And they're designed a little bit differently this time.
oh, look at that. How exciting.